Welcome to Season 2, Episode 11 of the Face to Face podcast with Jay Kinder and Michael Reese. Today we're going to be talking about Terrell Davis, why he flew all the way to Dallas, Texas as a Hall of Fame running back to spend time with both Jay and Michael, what we discussed about personal brand, recruiting, and the future of real estate. Let's get started.
This is Face to Face with the co-founders of the National Association of Expert Advisors, Jay Kinder and Michael Reese.
We believe that we can change the real estate industry. There is a better way to sell real estate.
Your success is ultimately a sum of the decisions that you make.
And they're really developing a process, a set of guidelines, a set of procedures.
They're also best-selling authors.
Here today to discuss the issue is Jay Kinder and Michael Reese.
Let's tee this up for everybody because I think there's a lot that can be learned. And obviously, I think, and I'm just going to go ahead and plug the book out the gate because, you've been working for 2 years on a book called Digital President, and you and Woods Davis, both wrote that book together. I was, fortunate enough to get, some early copies and obviously have a lot of conversation during the time that you wrote that book. But I really saw it all come together yesterday. And the bottom line is, Terrell Davis flew in, to our office here in Frisco, Texas, and spent a day with us talking about his personal brand, and writing the book and what all the things that's going to lead to for him in terms of really, building and propelling his personal brand. And I think there's a lot of takeaways from a real estate agent perspective as to what I experienced in the room that we can maybe talk through a little bit of that today. Michael, you good with that?
Yeah, Jay, dude, I'm good with that. I'm really excited. Let's get after it.
So talk me through, Mike. Talk me through what was the conversation like with Terrell Davis when you first started talking to him about being able to help him with his personal brand. Tell me, kind of just unpack that for everybody so they can kind of get an understanding on what the angle was and how you could help.
Yeah. So first of all, What happened was I got the opportunity to watch one of his talks, and that was pretty interesting because I think at the core with personal branding, it has to be congruent. Elon Musk says brand matches perception over time. I think a good mental model for that is think about Tiger Woods, right? We all had this image of Tiger, and he kind of damaged his personal brand and had to rebuild it. But brand matches perception over time, and so with an athlete like that, in comparison to Tiger Woods or anybody, what I realized was a lot of people have a brand and they're doing nothing with it, or they have a brand and they're not leveraging it. And so with him, when I went online to, I think it was a unique situation because I like football and I think I would have noticed, the brilliance in his athleticism and what he did, but I did not know a whole lot about him. So I got to really enjoy. I wasn't in a position where I was starstruck as much as I was in working with a celebrity, as much as I was more interested in his story because I didn't know it. Right. So I was able to learn about, I think you asked the question. If it wasn't you, I thought it was. But somebody asked the question, and I'll just say it was you. I think it was like, at what point did you know in your life that you were, did it change or flip for you that you knew you were going to be great at football? And what I would say, Jay, is that our personal brand is made up of a collection of stories that we've had in our life that now drive the way that we behave. And so at every moment, he had story after story after story. When we were driving down the road, he said something like, I remember, I had a coach and he had this philosophy, and when he said it, philosophy was like a key word. Right. And he was sharing, about his philosophy on how he raises his kids, his philosophy on, why he doesn't coach his kids. Right. He had all of this information on why he chooses to do what he does. And I think the goal was to really drill all that down into a handful of words that represent what me and you've worked so hard together in so many hours on, which is the inside advantage, right? The brand promise. Right. So what were those handful of words that were going to represent him? And just to give you context, I thought I had a great one. I mean, I thought and I didn't know his story. So just to give you some I had no idea his story. I just knew that he played football. So the natural thing for me was playmaker, because I thought,
Right.
his target audience was going to be entrepreneurs and stuff like that. And we ended up not going with that one because he told me that's Michael Irving's, and I wouldn't have known that.
Right.
He already owns that share in the mine. So the
Right.
last thing he wants to do is go call himself, something that somebody else is already known for. And we landed on something that I think was amazing. And that was just a collection of really taking all of his stories and really, what made him him, what he stood for, what he stood against, what made him tick and talk, and that's where most of the time was invested.
Right. What was fascinating to me is, when you listen to his stories, you start to unpack, you really start to unpack who he is, and as a Hall of Fame running back. I mean, let's not, let's take a moment to give credit to what this man has accomplished. Right. So, as a Hall of Fame running back, with the shortest career I believe it's the shortest career that's ever made it into the Hall of Fame, because he didn't break all the records. So when you look at all the records in the NFL, you're not going to find Terrell Davis on most of them, because he didn't play that long of a career. He had a pretty short career. So, the question mark was always, okay, what was his body of work enough to get him into the Hall of Fame? And it obviously was. He was an exceptional running back, and they obviously had 2 Super Bowls wins during during the period he was there and all that. And to play at that level, right? And it's really humbling to hear his story, because it's not like he it wasn't like he was born a champion into football and just excelled, won a state championship, won a college championship. I mean, his college teams quit the program stopped. That's how he ended up at Georgia. And they only had, I believe at Georgia, they were a 50-50 season. You know what I'm saying? They had 5 wins, 5 losses. So not an exceptional career, but there was a point in his life where he had a thought, I might never play again. And at that moment, he decided, he made a decision, he made a choice to put it 110%, put it all in. And in doing that, he ended up, the last 2 games of the season after being injured in his senior year, he got to play above Hines Ward, which would have been a pretty good fill-in, I'm sure. As Hines Ward is probably another Hall of Fame. He'll be a Hall of Fame receiver for the Steelers, and so he had to take that guy's place, play for those 2 games. Just happened to be scouted by the Gary Kubiak and the Denver Broncos, and then from this whole unpacking of his story. He ends up, playing a game. He tells the story. If you watch it online, he tells the story about the first game, exhibition game they played in Japan for the Broncos. He actually called downstairs to get an early flight home because he just didn't want to play. He was afraid of success, is what it boiled down to. And he has a better way of telling that story than I can. But the pressure of success was, he wasn't all in. And he called downstairs, but he said he couldn't speak Japanese, so that didn't work too well. So he ended up having to play in the game, and he made a spectacular tackle. You can find it on YouTube, during that game and on the special teams, and ended up getting, making the team, and then ultimately ends up becoming a Hall of Fame running back for the Denver Broncos, which is just it's a crazy series of events of all things that could have happened, that would have resulted in him not being in the Hall of Fame. But the few choices that he made that did result in him being in the Hall of Fame, and then looking back on your life and reflecting on the moments that really made you who you are, and the lessons you really learned during that process of becoming a Hall of Fame, and playing at a Hall of Fame level. And I think that transcends football when you break it down. Yesterday I think we had some great conversation around when you break that down to what do you have to do to get to this Hall of Fame level. And you talk about the mindset, and you talk about, and I don't want to unpack the whole book that's going to be written on this, but when you unpack the whole thing, there's really there's a methodology of, first how you think and how you're thinking about things. It's incredibly important in everything that you do, and then there's a process. There's a methodology to finding success in anything. And that when you unpack it, and those same principles work for a Hall of Fame running back, that can work for how to build a successful real estate career. that's something that's pretty magical when you unpack that and all the stories that come along with it. It was an incredibly interesting day in my mind. So I don't know if you have anything else to add. I thought that was great.
Yeah, no, that was well said. I couldn't have said that if I wanted to. I don't know all those people's names. That was like almost perfectly regurgitated.
Right. Yeah. And I had the opportunity to interview him once before, so I had to learn a little bit about his career before I interviewed him, just so I could have conversation with him. But he's about as down to earth and real a dude as you'll ever meet. I mean, honestly, he's like he's a super nice guy. So I think that definitely helps in the conversation. Let's unpack this. This personal brand and really what you guys have done with Digital President. What is it? What is the takeaway as a real estate agent that you could apply in reading the book? What would you say is the takeaway that someone would have if they were to read Digital President?
So I would say the goal is to build an audience and to be known for something in that audience.
Right.
And so a lot of the times we get celebrity endorsements and we're building an audience. What I realized, Jay, was that me and you have kind of a the truth be told, like a lot of my experience in real estate helped me understand the principles for growing in NAEA, but then the lessons that we've learned at NAEA, I wish I could go back and apply them to grow my real estate business, right? So and so I had the unique opportunity to jump back in 2016 and really leverage some of it was almost like going back and playing high school football when you've already been at D1, right? It's just a different level of risk that you're taking and investment and so the reason I say that is because when I look back at a real estate agent, I had this conversation with someone this morning, was we think in subscribers, right? And so you look at YouTube, people say subscribe to my YouTube channel. People follow me on Twitter. What they're really saying is pay me with your attention, right? If I do something, I want you to know. And you're really trying to create a communication channel with an audience. And so you think that would be common sense. But unfortunately, we have this paradigm of leads, which changes everything. So what really, one of our buddies, Frank Kern, said, when we first got into the internet marketing side of things, everyone would refer to all of your subscribers as a list. And people would, a list would be like, how big is your list? I got 50,000, 100,000, 200,000 on my list. And Frank's tilt was, your list can be as big as you want it to be. That doesn't make it valuable. What makes it valuable is your relationship with the list. And so you have to really think of, Digital President is really just a actual strategy that would be, I think, termed or fundamentally considered, if I had to put it in a box, would be called relationship marketing. And relationship marketing just says, hey, listen, I'm going to build a relationship with people that say that they want to have a relationship with me. And we're going to agree on the front end, kind of the terms of what that relationship is going to be under. Now, at any point, they can take that relationship as deep as they want. And my goal is to provide them a platform, if you will. With Terrell, what I noticed, and one of the best personal brands out there visibly was if you look at Tiger Woods' website, Woods Davis pointed that out to me one day. He was like, dude, you got to check out this personal brand. And we went to it, and all the way from it was just beautiful. It was like, outside of, some of the, if he didn't have the little fiasco, that happened, that kind of changes like the congruency look a little bit. You can see a lot of good stuff that's hidden in that, from the colors, the layout, just everything is well thought through. So with all the way down to his personal logo, where it looks like a claw for Tiger, but makes a W, right? And so the problem is that, I'm sure you can subscribe somewhere for Tiger. The people that are, you got these people with huge personal, and don't get me wrong, this has nothing to do with Terrell. I think either they get to a point where they don't really, they don't like, they people say on stage when they get a Grammy, guys, hey fans, if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be here, right?
Right.
But the truth is that when you're on the bottom going up and you're not already there, you're not Blake Shelton. When you're not Blake Shelton or you're not, Jay-Z, right? Where and you're coming from the bottom up, you have to build that. You know what I'm saying? When you're not already there. And so
Right.
Jay-Z says in one of those songs, I am the brand, man, right? And he can put his name on anything. Well, with Terrell, there was some segmentation, from my observation, if you go look at his name and you type it in, other people are owning how he shows up on page one, right? They're telling his story. It's not his videos, his memes, and you definitely can't get more involved around the cause. And he shared with me some of the things that he was passionate about yesterday, and it was, there's a lot to him, and he's got a lot of things. I mean, he literally asked me in the car. He said, "Is there a charity that y'all belong to that you participate in?" And I asked him 5 minutes later, "Why did you ask that question?" And he said, "Man, he told me a story about when he started a charity, and you could just tell there was a lot of compassion outside of, I would have never known that, right?
Right.
I mean,
right.
I don't know what he stands for, what his movement is. I know he's getting he's getting inducted into the Boys Club of America, which is a huge organization. But if I was on his landing page, there's probably pictures at that event. He could he could stay relevant. How about that?
Right. There you go. That's it. Right. And even today, in today's, world where you're a Hall of Fame running back, the importance of remaining relevant to an audience is still critically important, and having, common ground that, that people can identify with, not just that, hey, I'm a Denver Broncos fan for life. You were a Denver Bronco, and for somebody like, and the real problem for that is somebody like Dez Bryant. You know what I'm saying? Like Dez Bryant, and I bring this up because of what, Terrell made a point to say, man, I wish they would have given me, a game plan for after football, because nobody in the NFL thinks about after football. And when you think about, well, at least Terrell played for the Broncos his entire career. You know what I'm saying? He's a celebrity, and that transcends probably Denver Bronco fans, but for the most part, always will be a Denver Bronco. And so that's a huge benefit for him. Dez, who just gets traded from the Dallas Cowboys, is probably a shoe-in for the Ring of Honor. But he's now no longer going to be the last half of his career, or at least probably how many ever years he's got left, 4 or 5 years if he's lucky, doesn't get injured, is going to be played with a multitude of teams because they're probably only going to offer him 1-year contracts. So, a guy that doesn't really have a home necessarily, or if he plays an extended, period of time for a team and does really well, and especially if it's in the NFC East playing against Dallas, he's no longer going to be as loved as a Dallas Cowboy. So what is this guy's, what is his personal brand going to be after football? When you don't have the luxury of being in the same city that, where you played your entire career, you have to have something that resonates with people to remain relevant, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's the trick, and what I thought was really, what I always do is I go look at other people who did a good job, and I just a modeler, right? And that was part of the exercise. Is sometimes you don't know what you don't know, and I think a lot of these individuals that have created these huge personal brands, they don't even know that it has value, and so they don't even know if it's, they don't know how. They're just not thinking that way. And to be honest with you, dude, I've watched the whole deal about President Clinton, how it was all these things that were like game changers, how Clinton used MTV, which was something nobody was doing at the time, no president had done, and how he was the precursor for what we see today in the elections. It was an amazing movie. It was about things that happened in the 90s. But it also talked about the internet and all these, how the internet started with Mark Andreessen. The point is that, like, I believe that the internet creates these opportunities for us as real estate people that people who before us just didn't have. And so for us, unless we're really thinking about how to use these tools that are at our disposal, like, how do we use a Facebook and a YouTube and a Twitter? You know, Trump is showing people how to use Twitter. How to, I mean, if you look at what he's doing, he's basically saying, listen, subscribe, hear directly from me, no false narrative. I'll talk to you directly. If you want to know what I'm thinking, don't get sound bites on BS or CNN or whatever. Just come right here and I'll tell you what's going on straight from the horse's mouth. That's as we start to, if you think about Facebook and Twitter, all of those things, they allowed us to communicate. For me to call my sister, well, if she didn't have a cell phone, then I had to call her at home, leave a voicemail on her, not voicemail, recording machine. Then she had to come home, check it, which that's a human error. Oh, I forgot to check it. You know what I'm saying? Didn't check it last night, right? And so, like, what happens is, as communication becomes more real time, whether that's communicating to people about, discoveries for cancer or being a video research, all those things, the internet allows us to be in. It allows us to have a platform for whoever wants to pay us with attention. It allows us to really communicate with them. And so what the goal is, I think, from a personal brand, is really really dialing in, what you're going to stand for in your marketplace, and being able to give some handles to that luggage above and beyond. I think it has to be above and beyond just, your service. I mean, that's what I think. I think that's the beauty, is that, when somebody transcends just the work that they do. I don't think somebody, like, you can't just be football. You got to be, you have to, that would be like, think about, I'm fascinated and you turned me on to him, and I didn't see it like you saw it until I really got into trying to decode why some things work with other people. And Joe Rogan is somebody that, you turned me on to his podcast. I love UFC. I was familiar with him. And if you look at, what is Joe Rogan's personal brand, right? Like, I think the image says it all, because he's going to talk about a conspiracy. He's going to talk about mushrooms. He's going to talk about Conor McGregor. He's going to talk to anything controversial. He's going to go in there and weigh in with his perspective and point of view, and bring somebody else in who doesn't always share his point of view, but who wants to have a discussion around an interesting topic. And you learn, and you're like, how does this guy know so much about everything? And so, but I'm sure that's who he is as a person. I'm sure that if he didn't have a podcast and you went to his house, he'd probably turn on his TV and say, dude, watch this thing I saw about the universe last night, or he probably talked to you like this if he was sitting with you, around a fire, and so it's authentic. It's truly authentic, right? And when you become authentic in your brand, then you attract people that are like you, and you that would be the goal. And so I think that I think my goal with talking to Terrell was, I felt like I had a duty or a responsibility to at least dig past the obvious. And that's, I think, if you can dig past the obvious, which it's understanding those things, but understanding them at a principle level and seeing how those are now actually applied to his life, that you see, okay, this is really who this guy is.
Right. This is what he's all about.
Yeah.
And this is, to a certain degree, this is what I can learn from him. And this is what makes him interesting and why I should tune in and listen.
Yeah. And it's interesting because one of the only thing I knew about him before I met him, that was probably one of the only bits of information I hung on to, was I kept on being told that he said, all right, let's do it. All right, let's do it. And I like, and it was like, he's a no nonsense guy. Like, if he likes it, he's going to say, let's do it. And he's a roll up your sleeve. Let's go take action. And so when we were decoding him, what he said to me, what he said to the room, and I just, I was listening, intently, was forward progress. Like, you want, every year you want to win the Super Bowl, but at some point you break it down to one play, right? Like, you got a game plan, but you got to execute every play to get the first down. And every first down, he said in Denver, we ran, they focused on first downs, That's what they focused on. And first downs end up becoming touchdowns. And you in an offensive mindset, you never backpedal. You always make forward progress, right? And there's opposition and resistance, a linebacker, things in your way of making progress, but you never go backwards. You live your life always making forward progress every single down, every single play, every single possession, every single game, every single season.
Right. Love that. So, all right. So let's, maybe we don't unpack it on this entire podcast, but for the agent that's going, yeah, but I'm not a celebrity. I'm not, I don't have, this following. I don't have the benefit of leveraging that into my personal brand. Where do you start when you're trying to identify your personal brand and who you are and what you stand for and how, and then how would you leverage that and just maybe give an example of how you might leverage that in your local marketplace to build that, to build an audience?
I think it starts with communicating with your database and segmenting your database based upon the current situation of the people you serve. So you have past clients, you have out of town clients. I think I call it the situational opt-in. Up until this point, and this is up until this point, and Jay, me and you have tried. I mean, this ain't easy to do. Me and you've known to do this, and we've struggled with it. I think we got it working at its best now, but for years we understood the concept, but it didn't always translate into being done because you're just so focused sometimes on making the sale, right?
Right.
It's a long-term approach and understanding the value. But if you truly just build and I'm not trying to make it real complicated, real simple, but if when people become a lead, if you can simply put them in a category and communicate to them valuable information. So right now we are considered subject matter experts, right? And there's certain problems that people have around the subjects that we're experts on. And so those problems that you want to do is you want to address and address solutions to those problems, which would in return create value for somebody by educating them. So you're educating them by providing them content that's relevant to them and their situation. And so a situational opt-in would be when somebody comes in, there's current situations that they're struggling with, whether it's refinancing, whatever it is. And having that basic understanding of who are the types of people you serve and how can I, upon creating a lead for my database of prospects or suspects or whatever, I would switch my mind and say, these are subscribers. These people aren't leads. They're subscribers who want to get to know me. And the minute that they feel that out of all the people on this subject that I understand the solutions better than anybody else, specifically at first them, which is really all you got to do because typically they do business with the first person they come into contact with, then they'll probably reach out for you when the time comes. Now, you can tell them you're number one, but that doesn't really talk to them about their problem. Like Terrell, I didn't tell Terrell ever, and nor did the conversation ever ask how much money had I made online, or that wasn't it. What I did was I showed and demonstrated to him people who had great personal brands and what his personal brand looked like. And I just simply shared with him, why it was important for someone of his stature, which was a Hall of Fame running back, to be able to capture this because he's about to speak in front of, he just went and spoke in front of a 20,000. I don't know what the number was. That's a total made up number. It could have been 2,000, but maybe the conference was 20. I don't know, but he speaks in front of big audiences all the time. But he doesn't have a database. And so the problem he has as an athlete, now speaker, is he's got 3 kids under the age of 8. No different than our buddy Haas Pratt when we helped him get off the road, right? Is if he doesn't start creating a more higher leverageable way of communicating to an audience than having to fly across town then, he's going to continue to miss, he's not saying this, but he could potentially, with 3 kids growing up, have to make a sacrifice on the revenue versus, going to track meets and spending time with the people that he cares about. And so he's just like all of us, looking for a better way. And the better way would be, we don't want it to be, we don't want his audience to be limited to the people that saw him a long time ago.
Right.
There's a lot of people that have an affinity with football and have a high level of respect with Hall of Fame football players that would love to know the things that they could learn in their life on how to have a better, I think what we said was how to embrace pressure, how to take responsibility, right?
Right.
And how to go to the next level. Like those were words that he used with us in real life conversation that we were pulling out of the air, right? And when in one thing he said, I wanted to be true to the game, which was, he felt like he wasn't giving it all he had. And when, like you said, Jay, his hamstring was separated and he had to watch from the sidelines and thought that he'd never play the game of football again, he made the decision, if he got back out on the field, he's going to be true to the game and he was going to give it all he could and leave it all on the field. And that was the game changer. Now, the reason he didn't do that in the past made a ton of sense, but you would never know unless, like he said to you, Jay, have you ever been on national TV? What do you say?
Right.
Something like every morning.
Yeah. Whatever he said, it was like, okay, I get it. That's a lot more pressure than I've ever had to deal with.
Yeah. Have you ever had people criticizing your every move for, what you're supposed to be good at weekly on national TV?
Right.
Telling you what you did right and did wrong, and all your loved ones are watching it.
So as an agent, the the thing that becomes challenging, because and I don't know what episode it was. We can probably pull it up and put it in the show notes, but the episode we ended up, I don't even think the episode talked. I don't think the title of the episode says anything about podcasts, but I think the entire podcast ended up being about becoming, why every real estate agent should have a podcast. And,
right.
And I think that if there's one thing that I believe in 1,000%, it's that you should have a podcast. And while the topic of real estate is not probably interesting enough, at least this is my current belief, and you can shoot this down if I'm wrong or if you believe differently, that the whole problem solution approach is great, except for real estate agents in a market. Like, you have to have that position in the marketplace as the guy that can solve the problems, the guy or the gal that has the market knowledge and that can help someone in any particular situation. Those situational, characteristics of, okay, it's a divorce. Okay, it's this or that or the other, right? So there's all of those different angles. And then there's a podcast about real estate, right? Like which you could make interesting. I mean, there's definitely ways you can make interesting, but do you think that's the angle, or do you think you take the angle of, let me find a charitable organization that I feel strongly about, and let me interview people as it within the community? For me, it was interviewing the business leaders in the community and being pro community and pro growth for the community, and interviewing just different people that had interesting things going on, whether it was at the college campus, or it was the technology center at the college campus and who's running that, or the mayor, or whatever the case, or somebody who's running for mayor. Like, those interviews, in and of itself, interviewing those people made me more of a celebrity, right? Because I was interviewing, people that were looked at as, local celebrities. But what other angles can you utilize to kind of become, to create someone who might want to listen to your podcast? I mean, how would you answer that question, maybe?
Yeah. I think so. I think that there's a couple of reasons. I think the art of it is aligning it to something that you're passionate about. Right. I think because, in every market, you can segment that market into people that match, specific, specific demographics. Take Lawton, if you will.
Right.
First of all, I think, I would approach it like a radio show, because it really could be. I know
right.
that you said a long time ago, Curtis used to have first of all, who are you trying to listen to? So we right now, I'm focused on creating the ability. One of the things that's at the top of my list is not only from a technology standpoint, but from a content standpoint is recruiting. And, a long time ago, we had a guy that worked for us. And when he was leaving, I thought he was really talented. And I said, man, if I were you, I would go work on creating a product for recruiting. And the reason that I said that is I thought there was a real problem in the marketplace.
For sure.
And now I think it's a real opportunity in the marketplace.
Right.
That I've heard people say that every problem in your business is a recruiting problem. And so, or you can solve every problem. And, what's the lifetime value of an agent? Well, that's depending on what brokerage you're at, right? So the point that I'm trying to make here is that I would align to my goal, and I would align my content to my goal, my passion, and things like that. If I was doing a podcast. Now, with that being said, I would do something that, that I felt like I could do for a long, long time that was going to serve my real estate business to create more transactions. The question is, can you create that podcast that's going to cover all the key words for people that are looking to move here? Also, like, for instance, I'll just give you an example. When we did the Inner Circle call, we had a lady who specialized in farm and ranch, I believe, and horse property, right? For her, I would probably do farm and ranch horse property in Colorado and then refer stuff out for other people who specialize in that and build that network and have other people who do that in other areas, as guests on the podcast, and probably throw a little bit of a wider net out there. And I might even consider just owning it for the country instead of referrals. You know what I mean?
Right. So, it's niched enough that you probably could. Right.
Yeah. So I would really nail that. And there's nothing more fun to me than trying to think about what is that universal positioning around the podcast. And I think it comes down to, like, what you stand for. The more authentic you are on what you stand for, what I've learned is you can do a podcast about chili peppers and the different temperatures, and you can create a huge audience worldwide. Now, with that being said, you're not probably going to sell a lot of real estate, and so you really want to make sure, from a real estate agent's perspective, wanting to grow their business, the question is, what type of guest? You asked the question. Remember what you asked, Jay? You said, is a high school kid going to listen to this? And then you left, and I was like, man, why are you going to drop that?
Right.
But that's a great question, right? Who is your listener? And I like to think of one person first. I think by thinking about one person in the book Digital President, it breaks down Maxim Magazine's subscriber base. And it's like 30% of all their subscribers are women, but their communication is all to men. So you'll still attract people that are not exactly who you're looking for if you can speak to that one person. And for that, I would probably attack it like you attack radio, to be honest with you, and I'd bring in the entire community and try to kind of be the digital mayor, like the guy who knows everything that's going on in town.
No doubt, that's there's that. I think that's the man that if that opportunity is available in your marketplace, man, what an opportunity that is. That's all I can say is, and again, I don't know if maybe people are afraid to do podcasts or they're afraid of the logistics. And if you are, let us know. We can help you with that. But yeah, it's definitely the biggest opportunity. I mean, for me, again, this all goes back to kind of my fundamental philosophy on building your real estate business is on, I want the phone to ring with people that want to do business with me, and we spend so much time coaching people through the season, if you will, of having to prospect and having to lead generate and 100 leads. I mean, even for instance, Braden, who's up at the office every day, him and Chad Montgomery banging out calls, they're which again, the whole purpose that I kind of pushed him in the direction of downpayment.org from leads perspective is you can become an expert in helping people obtain financing to buy a home, and you become more valuable. And those leads are much more likely to return a phone call than just chasing 100 people that did a home search, right? Like for me, I would just want to have a business where I felt like I was valuable and I felt like I was worth the weight, in gold to the consumer, and that I could really truly help someone. to a point that they tell everyone about how amazing the experience was and how it really helped them. And, I feel like that's, being positioned as an expert, especially around whatever it is that you're passionate about, whether it's charitable or it's, niche, related, to a niche like, homes on acreages, or for that lady, it was actually horse ranches. I mean, literally ranches all across the state of Colorado. That's a much, you end up having more fun. I always use Andrew Gadosh as the example, because, Gadosh is, living the perfect life, from our perspective, right? I mean, if you're going to sell real estate, why not have 80% market share of all the homes around, the one particular lake, and have, be the dominant brand, show homes by boat, throw parties at the lake, know everybody in your neighborhood, that lives on the lake because you live there with them, and really almost kind of control who it is that gets to live on the lake with you. I mean, like that's a pretty powerful position. I mean, he built a building outside of the neighborhood to be positioned as the brand. But I mean, he is the perfect example of someone who should have a podcast as it relates to that, to lake property or to lakefront property, because he's done a great job of it in many other areas. But I think that, you can start with, the podcast and work your way into becoming, having 80-90% market share of lakefront properties on Lake Lockingren. You know what I'm saying? I think that's possible in many markets, but I was saying a lot of agents haven't thought about it that way, as using that as a tool.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's 100%. And that would be fun too,
Heck yeah. I mean, he's got one of those jet things that, you shoot your way up in there and everything. I mean, he's living it up. I mean, he's got his own song. I mean, he has his own song. The lake, he wrote a song for the lake that it's got him embedded in it, so it's just it's another great example. So, I would encourage people to be going down the path of, let me read this book, Digital President, that y'all are talking about, and go read that book. Go learn how to build your personal brand and become, highly valued in your marketplace to the people that you want to be valued to, and build your personal brand. So I think that's, the takeaway that I had from yesterday with, Terrell was, it was brilliant what you guys, have built, and laid out in terms of how to, become the digital president of any niche. I think that's, it's a great book. I highly recommend it. I wish I'd have wrote it. You guys did a great job. I know how many hours y'all put in, really, boiling it down to the principles and getting it dialed in. But it was fun to watch, and it was fun to experience, working with a celebrity like Terrell Davis yesterday, and going through that process with him as well.
Yeah, dude, I had a great time. I can't wait to do it again.
Yep, absolutely. Well, I don't have anything else, man. That was just kind of what I thought would be valuable for people to hear and kind of learn about what we're up to. Anything else you want to add?
No, man, I'm just excited, and great job. Appreciate everybody. And, if you hadn't had the opportunity to subscribe, make sure you do. And please, if you can, leave us a review. We would definitely appreciate it.
Yep, absolutely. And if you haven't gone back and listened to, if you picked up on what we were laying down with recruiting, I believe it would have been episode 10, where we talked about the move to EXP that we made and why we made that. If you haven't listened to that, I would highly recommend that you listen to it. It creates an opportunity of a lifetime, we believe, and we're experiencing that. So we definitely want to, we don't want to talk about it on every episode, but we'll give you an opportunity to go back and listen to that episode and decide for yourself. So that's all I got, Mike.
Yes, sir.
You know how we say here at Kinder Reese, we either see you at the top
or from the top
or at the lake. See y'all later.